It's coming home. It's coming home. Is it coming home? After a drab 1-0 opening day victory over Serbia, gave England fans not a lot of confidence that the Three Lions will succeed at the Euros. It wasn't too long after Tyson Fury had caused doubts about his ability to reclaim his throne as not just the Gypsy King, but the World Heavyweight King, after being seen getting ejected by some quite friendly security, it must be said, near to his home up north. And he's since been in the gym. He says everything's okay. I'm not sure if he filmed that particular clip before or after the pub incident, but we'll be talking about that and a whole lot more on the latest edition of Seconds Out Live. And I'm delighted to be joined not by Ayman Khan with a haircut and, massive change in skin tone, it must be said. Instead, Mr. Josh Hart. Josh, how are you?
I'm very, very good, Danny. Bit of a last-minute super sub, but very happy to be here. How's everything with you?
All good. Yeah, Josh has come in, as he said, last minute. We're trying to locate Ayman Khan as it works out. From what I've heard about him on the pitch, it'd be like his marker trying to locate him at a corner or another set piece. Continuing the football theme, I'm not sure how long that's going to go on for. But yes, Ayman Khan, we're not sure of his current whereabouts. We will continue to send out search parties until we find him. But Josh will be a more than adequate replacement in the meantime, I'm convinced. But yeah, we're going to be talking, first of all, about Tyson Fury. But if this is your first time at Seconds Out Live, or indeed, if you are a regular visitor to these shores, please do give us a like. Please do give us a subscribe if you haven't already, and get your comments and questions in. And as I go through the preamble, I see Mr. Ayman Khan has finally woke from his slumber and decided to join us. Josh, you can stay. We've got all the capabilities, we've got all the mod cons here. We can do 3 people as we go. Just keep your comments brief so we can go to the chat. Otherwise, they get a bit upset. Ayman, how are you? Where you been? What's going on?
I am good. Sometimes you get a call and you have to do what a man has to do. And a man had to do what a man had to do. And he's here. Unfortunately, he just didn't take his phone with him and got caught in a little bit of traffic on the way back. But my mum is really happy that she got home and didn't have to walk home this time round. So, yes, that's a little bit of a lateness for myself, a little notch in the book there, the tardy book. But we're here and happy to be here for Seconds Out Live.
The walk. That is beyond reproach. So well done on that, Ayman. I don't even care if it's true or not. I think you've played a blinder. But yeah, we'll keep Josh with us for a bit too, just in case, I know, Ayman has any emergencies that he needs to go and attend to. I'm hoping that's not the case. But yeah, Ayman, you joined us just after my amazing preamble. I mean, you have to watch it on playback. Incredible intro, segueing from England's Euro hopes or lack of to Tyson Fury's possible problems in getting ready for the rematch of Oleksandr Usyk. Bearing in mind there is still 6 months to go. And we'll go to the chat shortly, but first of all, Tyson Fury, what was your reaction, Ayman, when you first saw the clip of him being, I was going to say unceremoniously thrown out, but it's actually quite more like a gentle escort out of a local hostelry?
Yeah, it was an interesting video. It wasn't actually, when that video came out, a couple of hours beforehand, I'd logged onto Facebook and I'd seen another video, and it was the video of Fury getting escorted out of the pub first. But you couldn't see who it was. You couldn't even tell if it was Fury. There's a couple of frames where you can sort of see the side of Fury's face. And I thought, Fury's probably had a bit of a night out here. You could tell he's had a bit too much, and it's not the greatest of scenes. And then you see the other bit that's added on afterwards that came out a couple hours, where he's on the floor and he's really kind of struggling to get up. And it wasn't great, to be honest with you. I know that subsequently people in the discussions I've had with people kind of say, look, leave him alone. He's enjoying himself. He's not in camp. Sometimes people just need these kind of things to relax. But I suppose it's just when we have in our minds the Usyk rematch, we kind of want to see Fury in the gym, preparing, getting ready, even if it's months and months away. But I don't know. I've kind of changed my thought on it, and I kind of feel like maybe it's one of those things that maybe he needed to just let his hair down, relax a little bit, have one of these, maybe not another, and get the rematch on later on this year. But the initial thought was that it wasn't the greatest of look for an elite athlete, and where sports like this, you don't usually see elite athletes do these type of things. It was a little bit concerning.
Yeah, so going to the chat, just a couple of comments here that I think, represent something I should address. So the Keggy says, this is disgusting. Fury just had one last blowout before he entered his training camp. Fight is December 21st, 6 months away. You a clown for this. I a clown, the Keggy. And Kelvo says, just let him be. I'm sure he feels shit enough without a pylon. So the idea here isn't to start any sort of pylon. It's merely the biggest story in boxing, particularly in the UK currently. It's no disrespect to anyone that fought at the weekend or is fighting next weekend. But Tyson Fury's viral video, if you like, and the reaction to it has created a massive stir. And everything on social media, the views we're getting on YouTube, indicate that that's what people want to talk about. So it's nothing to do with having a pylon or having a pop at Fury. It's just analysing his behaviour and seeing if it has a wider significance. And we'll talk about Johnny Nelson's comment shortly, because I think someone's mentioned that in the chat, and it was 2 seconds out. Leroy Vassell, Fury must learn quickly that you cannot live a lack lifestyle and win world titles. He was in with a supremely skilled fighter who lives the life. Callum Dickey agrees with Keggy, says 6 months out, no way should this story be allowed any more traction. Guy who got drunk and fell over, chill out. I've explained why we're discussing it already. Actually putting his fall as the thumbnail, I expect Tyson will treat you accordingly as well now. Bellends. Well, thanks for that, Robbie Evans, and appreciate you still watching despite us being Bellends. Although I should say I picked the thumbnail, so if you want to call me a Bellend, that's absolutely fine. But my colleague should escape your wrath. Callum Dickey goes on to say he thinks Tyson Fury's done with seconds out now for sure. I didn't realise, Callum, that you spoke for the Gypsy King. Maybe he really was drunk, maybe he's still drunk if that's the case. Jason Gavin says England similar to Ben Whitaker, style but no real substance. I'm sure we'll get on to Whitaker later on in the show. Some serious shade there from Jason Gavin. Mike W still has faith in Fury. Says Tyson will win all the belts back again, undisputed king. But Adrian Marchand disagrees and says Tyson won't win in the rematch. Michelle, again, Tyson Fury will be back, no worries. Usyk is a shame for heavyweight at some point. I'm not sure what he means by that. Maybe he's not suited to heavyweight. Big Dog Boxing Fitness says, I wonder would the big bad Zhang dispatch Fury? Gary, huge hater of Tyson Fury along with bitter old 12 lost Johnny Nelson. What's the obsession, mate? Gary, if you knew anything about me, you'd know that I've covered Tyson Fury's career for longer than pretty much any other video journalist in the UK. So I think you're off base on that one, unfortunately. We're here to cover the news and the big events that boxing fans are talking about. Loved One says, if Tyson won the fight, would he still be saying the same thing about him on his knees, a bit drunk? DB Cooper, who among us hasn't kissed the pavements at Morecambe at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday night out? I saw Ayman do that in Skegness once. Wow.
Never been.
Yeah, well, you probably want to go now. Tarmac One says, does he ever comb his hair? I'm assuming he's not talking about Fury. Hair is in the rearview mirror at this point. Where are we? Thunder Road. Danny, excellent interview with Stan Dubois. Honestly, didn't look at that before reading it out, so I'm not just getting some clout there. First time hearing him speak, and he's got an impressionable laugh. Yeah, well, he spends most of the interview laughing, in fairness. At me, probably, because I'm a clown, as Keggy has already pointed out. Fizz says, Tyson Fury will become the Asian version of John Cena. Not really sure what that means. My brain's not working quick enough on that one. Robbie Evans says, well taken. Thanks, Robbie. Scott Watty Goddard, and completely off topic, says, I want to see Fabio Wardley against Jared Anderson. Jared Anderson's got a tough fight to get past next anyway. In Big Martin Bacoli. I was speaking to Billy Nelson earlier, and no one will be surprised to know that Billy is very confident in his man coming out on top on August the 3rd in Riyadh Season's US debut. Chad Fletcher asks if the rematch Fury Usyk will be for undisputed. We'll be talking about that, I am sure. Who else? Oh, Tarmac once corrected his post now and says, does Ayman ever comb his hair? I mean, you spelt your name right, Ayman, at least. Ayman's got nothing to say about that, apparently. Fizz says, Martin Bakody versus Usyk is the best fight ever. Fizz must be Billy Nelson, I'm guessing, his alt account. Josh, what did you make of Tyson Fury's video escapades?
Obviously it's a little bit concerning to see, you know, like Eamon said, when you're looking at such an elite level athlete and seeing them in a state like that, it's not a great look. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure most people who enjoy drink may end up in a state like that at one point. I do feel some people might be looking into it a little bit too deeply. You know, the fight isn't all the way until the back end of December now. So, you know, it's still plenty of time to train. But, you know, it isn't a great look, but that's what happens when you're in the spotlight, whether you do something bad or something good. If you do something of note, you're going to make headlines for it. And it was one of those stories that was just bound to make headlines. So we'll have to see if that hasn't affected him come the rumoured date of December 21st.
Just jumping in here, Danny, sorry. I get some of the comments, and I get kind of some people maybe think that people who are commenting on this video, you know, are lumping in on Tyson Fury, and I completely get, look, you're absolutely entitled, whether you're an elite athlete or not, whoever you are, you want to blow out, whatever. It's not really anyone's business. You just have to add some of the context to Tyson Fury's career and some of Tyson Fury's out of the ring absences to the moment, because we all want to see the undisputed rematch later on this year, but we all are a little bit concerned of why he hasn't been in the ring sometimes, and that's because of the mental health and some of the scenes and the videos and images of Fury ballooning up in weight because he had problems, he had issues that he was dealing with, and you know, sometimes you can't escape those things, but people are just kind of wondering, is it the start of something? Is it someone who maybe needs help at that point? Because we want to see a healthy Tyson Fury, both inside and outside the ring. So it's not just lumping on him in any form because of this video. It's not saying he can't do that. It's just wondering and hoping that isn't the start of something else. I'm hoping it's not. I don't think it is. But I do want to see a Fury who, you know, is in the best of states. He wasn't in that video. I'm hoping it's not the start of anything else. I don't think it is. Once again, just reiterating that. But that's just the context of it all as to why it's worth the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, as DB Cooper says here in the chat, let's be real. Yes, he's allowed to let his non-existent hair down, but also that is concerning seeing him faceplant a pavement given his history. Gary says, we are going to need Ayman Khan's obsession with Tyson Fury, encouraging the bitterness from Johnny Nelson and George Groves, who've been jealous of Fury for years. Yeah, Gary, I think you're being a bit harsh here. I don't know what your kind of relationship or otherwise with Tyson Fury is. But if it was AJ, for example, doing the same thing, even without the history of, you know, alcohol and extracurricular activity, shall we say, from Tyson Fury, we'd still be discussing it. Any famous figure within boxing who's creating news and getting a reaction, we're going to discuss it here on Seconds Out Live. We don't have bias, no fear or favor. That's just what we do. That's what we're here for. And it's not to have a pop at anyone or because anyone's got anything against anyone. You know, as I said earlier, Tyson Fury and I go way back, and there's no way I'd countenance any sort of prejudice against him specifically or anyone else, because it's just not the way we run Seconds Out. So, yes, you can disagree and think that perhaps we shouldn't be I don't know, adding to the media Ferrari around this subject, and that's absolutely fine. But please don't suggest it's anything to do with any bias on our part, because that's certainly not the case. You look like Eddie Hearn's big brother. I don't know if that's for me or it's got to be for me, really, hasn't it? Looking by process of elimination. Yeah, I mean, I think he's actually a couple of years older than me, which is depressing. Callum Dickey says, you are having a pop. The thumbnail was having a pop. Yeah, I can understand why you might be a bit upset by the thumbnail, but the main topic we're talking about is what occurred with Fury that was caught on video last week. So it was either that or a picture of him being escorted from the pub. Now, if you think that's marginally or significantly less offensive, then fair enough. And we'll take that on board. Jason Gavin says, would say it's defo a relevant talking point. Tyson Fury was out of the sport for 2 years already for alcoholism and drug abuse, PED and otherwise. This is all a matter of public record, Jason Gavin. It have to be, otherwise we probably get sued. So, you know. DB Cooper one, he's just talking about Eddie Hearn again. Right, so someone asked earlier, will the rematch be for Undisputed? But we'll talk about that in a minute. What I actually want to ask, Ayman, you spoke to Johnny Nelson over the weekend, obviously at the show that we're going to talk about later with Chris Billam-Smith. Great performance against Richard Riakporhe. And Nelson was under the impression that Tyson Fury won't make the rematch with Usyk on December the 21st. He feels they're never going to fight again. Just tell us what was behind this for anyone who hasn't seen the interview.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was what was discussed a moment ago as to the context of Tyson Fury's career and some of the reasons why he's been outside the ring. I think that Johnny Nelson's thought process is that he just won't want to take on that rematch again against Usyk, which is a little bit surprising considering the riches that are available abroad just by default of taking the rematch, even if you don't think as an opponent, as a competitor, that you do have a shot in the fight. You do have a shot of claiming the undisputed titles. But why wouldn't you take it? Because at least you'd get the money. But Johnny kind of sees, he's a man that doesn't really need the finances anymore. He'll just sail off into the sunset. He just feels like Usyk might be a hurdle too far. And once Usyk's out the picture, as Johnny was saying, talking about moving to cruiserweight, talking about doing movies, talking about sailing off into the sunset down the line, that maybe Fury might return back to the heavyweight division and then go for the belts. So I just feel that Johnny maybe feels that with once, as he called Usyk, their average southpaw, might have Fury's number for now. Might have Fury's number for now, and Fury won't want to take on that challenge. I disagree with that, and Fury's already announced his intentions as to take on and reclaim, as he says.
You're personally attacking Tyson Fury for having a blowout with his friends at a local pub. No one's personally attacking Tyson Fury. This is a pretty grown-up, considered discussion about the video that went viral and what impact it can have on his future. No one's personally attacking him, just questioning whether it means anything beyond what we've seen on film. A national acrobat says no active professional boxer should be on the lash like that. Tell Ricky Hatton. Not now, obviously, because he's not an active boxer anymore. Plenty of time for beer, etc. after the gloves have been hung up. I mean, he's not the first, he won't be the last. That was a point that Billy Nelson made earlier. That there's boxers up and down the country who will, when they're not in training camp, be drinking alcohol and out with their friends and so on. Iron Stealth 3.0, as long as it is a one-off, then yeah, Tyson is proving he's a normal person. 90% of the population has had one too many and ended up in a right old state. Jason Gavin, Fury did spend his whole career talking about the demolition jobs he'd do on cruiserweights. A cruiserweight almost stopping him and then moving back down could be the last straw for Fury's ego. Gary, Johnny Nelson is a despicable person and using Tyson Fury's name for clout, encouraged by SecondsOut for views. If, Gary, you're accusing us of the heinous crime of bringing up big news and big name boxers to try and get views for our channel, which is a business and, none of us are working for free, then yes, I plead guilty every single time. Because, Gary, I hate to break it to you, pal, that's our job. DB Cooper 1, I mean, Ryan Garcia drank every day for months, so there's that, if it is to be believed. Frank Sinatra, he's come back from the dead just for SO Live. I was shocked at how good Fury was against Usyk, considering how busy he's lived his life as a celebrity. It was a great fight. He should be proud. Well, maybe he is proud. Maybe he thinks, if he knuckles down a bit more for the rematch, he can redress the balance and win the fight. Josh, so far out from the rematch, still 6 months, and forgetting about the specific video and what we've discussed, who are you kind of leaning towards at this stage for the return in December?
I'm gonna ever so slightly lean towards Usyk again, because the first fight we didn't have an awful. When you look at the stars, we didn't have a lot to base our judgments off. But they've shared 12 rounds with each other now. We know what they can do to each other, because I think some people forget that I believe Fury had Usyk hurt earlier on in the fight, just not as significantly as how Usyk had Fury hurt later on. But I'd still side with Usyk. I feel he is just a nightmare for anyone. The calculated pressure, I feel like it's something Fury will struggle with. I feel like no matter who you bring in for sparring to prepare for that fight, you're not going to be able to bring in anyone that can match Oleksandr Usyk, and that's just a simple, plain fact. So I'd lean towards Usyk, and I did back him in the first fight as well. So maybe could go 2 for 2 here and get two successful Usyk predictions, but we never know, because that's what happens when you get two such elite level fighters. You just never fully know how it's going to play out, and the first fight was a very close fight. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how it plays out come the rumoured date of December 21st.
Scotty Watty Goddard says the people in the interview are the type of person to say John Fury is a nice lad. Frank Sinatra says, come on, fellas, you never been pissed up then. He's human. What I don't like is a man that would rather take a video of a man struggle rather than help him to his feet. Yeah, I mean, I've got just as much animosity towards whoever filmed it. They've obviously just, So I saw Simon Jordan's reaction on TalkSport earlier, and I can't remember if it was him or Jim White that said it, but one of them said, oh, yeah, he was clearly just waiting around on a street corner waiting for something like this to happen. I'm not sure that's quite the case. I'm not sure people, well, maybe in Morecambe because they know Tyson Fury is a local celebrity, but I think they just got a bit lucky. Maybe they were in the pub, maybe they were passing it by, and it's not every day you see a 6'9" famous boxer stumbling around outside. So, he got dollar signs or pound signs in his eyes, and yeah, I think that is reprehensible. I completely agree. It's not the right way to make a living. But yeah, again, we're not digging in on Tyson Fury in this. We're just talking about what is the major news story of the past 7 days in boxing.
And a lot of people said that, Danny, and a lot of people said that in the interviews that I've done this week. Baron McGuigan said it as well too. Why don't people just leave Tyson Fury alone? Let him have that moment. Let him have that point of time to relax and blow out. Completely get that from the Fury point of view. Sometimes that does happen in this world, and they take the clips and they sell it out to the newspapers and things. But yeah, Fury was captured on that night, and now we've seen Fury capturing some moments of him training, which is great. Hopefully we see a few more of those, and hopefully he is on the right path.
Thunder Road says, is that Josh Hart, the white-collar boxer? I saw his fight on YouTube. I reckon Robin Deakin could give him some trouble. That's harsh. Robin Deakin, I was on a TV show, like a really minor TV show back in the day. And he was an absolute annoying. He was like having a toddler for the day. Really, really irritating. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, and if he's watching this, hi Robin, please don't ever contact me. However, that is a bit of shade there, Josh. I've got to say, I know it was your white collar debut that Thunder Road's referring to, but Robin Deakin wasn't the best pro boxer, is fair to say. Any response to Thunder Road?
Listen, send me a contract, give me 3 weeks to train, and we'll get it on. But wherever, whenever, I'm game as anything. I would get my white collar trophy out right now because they don't give them out for free. But I do believe you're throwing far too much shade on my name right now, and I do feel ever so slightly disrespected.
Yeah, I feel very disrespected in your position, I think. But that's what DB Cooper does, and that's what Thunder Road does. So don't worry. We're all friends here, really. They just struggle to express it sometimes. DB Cooper one says, you're also like Charlie Parsons, but 100 times better at your job. So there you go. You got to take the good with the bad. What is it? Don't let praise go to your head or criticism go to your heart. Is that the saying? Thunder Road, he's having a little pop at me. I did just say what Thunder Road like. Girls in Tyson Fury's state are the type Flexen gravitates towards to at closing time. Mate, if they're on the floor spread-eagled like Fury was, gravitating's the only way you get there, surely. DB Cooper one, Josh Hart's white-collar title holds more value than whatever Ben Whitaker won against the international student. That's harsh, DB Cooper one. Maybe a tiny bit racist as well, but we'll look at that. We'll look at that. I think we're interviewing Ezra Aranyika later today as well. I hope I haven't just butchered his name. It's not me doing the interview, I should point out. Usyk versus AJ3, who wins, asked Fizz. We'll get to that. But first, in our poll, we're actually asking about the rematch outcome between Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk. We haven't got the poll out as early as we normally do. I'm pretty annoyed with myself for that. But I had to defend myself against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, just like Hamlet. But coming back to what we're talking about, Tyson Fury against Oleksandr Usyk 2, or Usyk versus Fury 2 to be accurate. Repeat or revenge? Simple binary choice, A, B. Let us know what you think. Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, please bang that poll out and we'll let you know the results at the end of the show. But just going back to what we were talking about, Ayman, I asked Josh already, who are you leaning towards in the rematch as things stand right now, and why? Because if it's Fury, I want to understand the rationale of what he can do differently.
It's really hard to even actually think about that match just because there's so much going on, and also the way that the first fight came about, there was pullouts on both sides, so it's hard to kind of really get to the point of thinking about the fight. And it's hard to also get out the images of the 9th round in the fight, and also for the 4th, 5th, and 6th round from a Fury perspective of how he was controlling it. It's a difficult thing to think about, and right now you'd have to give Oleksandr Usyk the edge in that fight. Speaking again to some of the people I interviewed this week, some even think that Usyk will do a much more emphatic job on Tyson Fury this time around. Barry McGuigan saying words to that effect, saying that Fury just doesn't have a chance in that rematch. And I imagine that Usyk will take great confidence in being able to do what he did that night. I just feel that there is more to come from Fury. I just feel the sincereness of Fury saying that his corner had the cross wires, and if he'd really pushed on and got the instruction from the corner to say that, look, you need this round, then he would have gone and given more in that round. Ultimately, that responsibility falls on Fury to not do that and maybe not feel that in that moment as well from himself. But I do also feel that Oleksandr Usyk wasn't the Usyk that we saw for all the conversation surrounding Fury and the video that got leaked. Also got to recognize as well that in the interview that he did with the 3 Knockdown Rule podcast, he said, I don't like being at this weight. I don't like eating up at this weight. I'm now doing movies. This is one of the signs you see of someone who's now got one foot out the sport, now has got some other direction to look at. Now has accomplished his goal as well too, whilst Fury is hungry for something else. And that kind of shifts the feeling and motivation a little bit in my mind as to when I look at both these athletes. So by no means do I knock out Fury's possibility of winning. It's just that you have to go with Usyk, and it was a close fight the first round. I think it'll be a close fight again. I just tip it to Usyk to win again on points again.
Larry Liston kind of alludes to a similar point as you, Ayman. He says it's going to be interesting to see if Fury sticks with Sugar Hill or perhaps makes Andy Lee the head trainer. Lee had a good year so far. I'd be very surprised if Big John Fury is in the corner next time. And not because I think he necessarily did anything wrong the first time, but I think because of all the talk about it and the fact that a lot of critics have called him a distraction, and that is the major change from corners previously, I would be surprised if he's still there in December. He might even decide to take himself out of the firing line. He might feel that he's become a distraction and just let the trainers get on with it, and he'll watch from ringside. I don't know. No source has told me this, but we shall see. Fizz says Fury will be on the front foot this time. We'll have a much better chance. Gary has taken a break from destroying my character to say boxing really needs Tyson Fury to beat Usyk. Usyk genuinely has a small base of fans that win never elevated boxing. Fury knows he needs a KO now. He can't leave it to points. Jason Gavin, when Fury beat Vlad, it was climbing his Everest and didn't seem at the time the rematch would ever happen. Has Usyk climbed his Everest? Very good point. What else motivates Usyk now he's completed boxing more than Tyson had? Well, apparently moving back down to cruiserweight and becoming undisputed again, which was a surprise to me, but I think he means it. Robbie Evans, Usyk knows Fury through 4 rounds away, showboating and recording. I don't think that's the right word there, but yes, I mean, I feel Fury coasted for a number of rounds and became complacent, but anyone I've suggested that to while doing interviews, including Billy Nelson earlier today, has said they don't think that's the case. But it did seem that way, that he was getting not drunk on his own success necessarily, but certainly felt that he was in a safer position than he perhaps was. A National Acrobat says, close fight, my back eye. That was a 9th round stoppage win for Usyk. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't stopped though, and it did go to the cards, and it was close on the cards, and I had it close for what that's worth. Fizz says, Lee is the person that told Fury he won the fight after the 9th round. I'd have to go back and look at the tape. DB Cooper 1, I like Sugar Hill, but they keep treating him like he's some freelancer who dives into camp at the 11th hour. Shame, because he's the only one who gave correct advice. Yeah, I mean, it's not a dissimilar way to how a lot of the coaches in the US work, including famously Sugar Hill's uncle, Emmanuel Stewart, who was often employed as a hired gun, either on a fight-by-fight basis, and often for the last kind of 4 weeks of camp where the real sparring is overseen and the technical work is completed. Fury may have felt and may still feel that the early weeks of camp, when you're getting yourself into fighting shape and, you start your very early technical work, he can do either on his own or with someone he knows well. And Sugar Hill doesn't need to travel. I'm not sure what their exact strategy is in terms of camp, but it's not uncommon is what I'm getting at. Robbie Evans says, I like Nelson's idea of a drastic shuffle, like Fury going to the Ingalls. I don't know. I feel it's quite late in Fury's career to make such a dramatic change and before a very important fight. John Wick says Danny's a legend. Thanks, John Wick. Shame you weren't here 20 minutes ago. Jack Dutton, if Fury wins the rematch, will it be AJ next? We can talk about that in a minute. Frank Sinatra, I've always drank and always trained. I'm over 50 and still get lathered with my pals. Try and do what I do in the gym when I sober up. It's how we live. Who's we, Frank? Are you grouping yourself with Fury there? Are you a former world heavyweight champion and Gypsy King? You'll have to let us know. Iron Stealth 3.0. Usyk talking about going back to cruiserweight is saying something. Usyk may just have a problem he can foresee for himself, in my opinion. A national acrobat. Do you always agree with refs and judges or only when it favours your guy? I don't know if he's asking us or if he's asking other people in the chat. DB Cooper 1, what they said. Big John, keep him at distance, move around. Sugar Hill, you need to go for it, be aggressive. Andy Lee, you're winning this. Yeah, I mean, in that very brief, bit there, it does seem like Sugar Hill was the one talking the most sense. But high pressure environment, isn't it, in an undisputed title fight in the corner? And who knows if Big John had kept, if Fury had kept Usyk at range and moved around, if he was able to do that, that might have took him over the line or taken him over the line as well. We will never know. Our National Acrobat says, I'm asking you, and he's put you in block caps just so we all know. It just makes me think of that Stalker thing on Netflix. I think, I mean, I agree with the judges when I agree with the judges. I'll score fights round by round generally. I certainly did at the weekend, and we'll be talking about that show shortly. So if I think someone's come up with a completely ridiculous scorecard, and I felt at least two of the scorecards in Billam-Smith Riakporhe were well out, then I'll say so. But just going back to this before we move on to our next topic, someone was asking what will be next for Fury or Usyk if they win, and will it be an AJ fight? Josh, looking into your crystal ball, what do you see as the future? Do you see Joshua fighting one of these two guys, Usyk or Fury, in 2025?
I think it all depends on how the rest of this year plays out, because we're presuming, and from what we're hearing, Anthony Joshua is going to be fighting in September. If he doesn't get the result against, whether it is Daniel Dubois or someone like Zhilei Zhang, if he is to lose to one of them, well, I don't think we'll see that fight, because I don't think there'd be any argument to make to say we can throw Joshua into an undisputed fight coming into the back of it off a defeat. But if Joshua is to get through, with Turki Al-Sheikh's vision, we know how badly he wants to make Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, or even a third fight with Usyk. So if Joshua keeps winning, I would be very, very surprised if he didn't face the winner in 2025.
A National Acrobat's gone crazy with the caps now. He's basically saying Fury was a 9th round stoppage and you know it. Well, yeah, but in the books it wasn't, was it? That's the point. You can only go with what actually happens. Adi Oladipo says, guy with the specs is a fraud, another blagger in boxing. It's a bit harsh, Adi. I don't think we've even had you on the chat before. He's woken up and chose violence, assuming if he has just woken up.
It's no worries. I've been called definitely a lot worse, so I'll take that one as a compliment there.
Yeah, well, he says another blagger, so I assume you're in good company as well. Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate everyone who joins us. But yeah, so Modfather Vinny, if you want to whack up headline number 2, as fun as it is to talk about Tyson Fury, and we will come back to the poll results at the end of the show in terms of the rematch with Usyk. We should talk about the weekend's action, starting with the Big Show. Not the Big Show, the wrestler, because he goes by Paul White now for many other reasons. We won't be talking about him. We are actually going to be talking about the big boxing event that took place at Selhurst Park, home of Crystal Palace, where they're used to seeing excitement, certainly in the latter part of this season, with 4 members in the England squad, of course. And we saw Chris Billam-Smith not only gain revenge over the only man to defeat him as a pro in Richard Riakporhe, but he also, and quite handily, defeated him to retain the WBO Cruiserweight title. And this follows hot on the heels from rather lackluster performance from Gypsy in the rematch with Maris Bridis. So maybe the gap between Opataya, supposedly at the top of the cruiserweight division, and the likes of Billam-Smith is not quite as wide as we've been led to believe. Ayman, you were ringside. What was your major takeaways from CBS against Riakporhe 2?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't the greatest of fights. Shows are always a great occasion. They bring something different, bring a different atmosphere, different air to it all. Always looks good for boxing when you can stage some form of show in a stadium. And for the most part, there were a lot of people in there to watch Richard Riakporhe, his home crowd, support him in his world title effort. It wasn't to be on that night. Maybe part of that big occasion getting to Riakporhe to some degree. But Chris Billam-Smith just showing that he's one of those fighters is he's talked about the 1%, the 1%, the 0.5%, and every little bit that he can get, every little edge that he can get on his opponents when they're sleeping, he's working, he's gained and gathered through experience in the ring and outside to, run forward, run faster, push harder against his opponents. And he's really kind of taken that and he's really kind of built on that. And now he's cemented himself really in the UK, of course, and across the world too as the world champion. And to get that victory over Riakporhe, who I get the sense with Chris Billam-Smith that as much as he doesn't let on, it was a bit of a thing for him to, get this win and avenge the defeat that he felt he didn't deserve at the time. I get the feeling that Chris really wanted this night. This was a sweet victory for him, and he's got that. It won't top winning the title over his former gym mate Lawrence Okoli, but it was still something big for him. And for me, I think what Chris has shown is an intelligence alongside his team as well too. Shane McGuigan, they've come up with they crafted a game plan in the last two fights where it wasn't the most exciting, and Chris Billam-Smith in his rise towards the world title was in some really watchable, entertaining, engaging fights because Chris was open to his detriment, but he also was on the front foot looking to finish off his opponent. And what he did in these fights were, look, he made it ugly in spots to stifle Richard Riakporhe coming forward, make sure he can push him off on the back foot, and then he just was attritional. That's one of Chris's biggest assets is he's able through his fitness to get his opponents into the later round, dominating that point. And that's where when you look at a fight with Gypsy and you see the two Breeders fights and how they went and how they swiveled after the sixth round, the latter half of the fight, and knew for success in a potential fight for unification in the cruiserweight division. Do so from a CBS perspective of a real route to success for Chris to win that fight now. I think Chris has really pushed on since boxers have also pushed him too, and it's great to see sometimes boxing pushes some not so great stories, not so great moments, but a win for the good guys is a win for everyone. And it was real good to see Chris Billam-Smith win. It would have been just as great also to see Richard Riakporhe get the victory and fulfill his dreams. And Shane McGuigan said as well too in my post-fight interview that Richard will win the world title in the future. He's just got to keep plugging away at it. But the night belonged to Chris Billam-Smith.
So Iron Stealth 3.0 says it was a great night of boxing. No arguments here. Jason Gavin says, to be fair, Breedis, even at this age, is on another level to Richard Riakporhe. Larry Liston says, the scorecards were crazy. I gave Richard 2, maybe 3 rounds at best. I think I gave him 2. Thought CBS put on a masterclass, and his timing specifically was magic. Not the best fight, but takes 2 to dance. Fizz, and I'm assuming he's joking, says Chris Billam-Smith versus Canelo next, please. DB Cooper 1, I like CBS, but my God, it just shows how awful the cruiser division is. Strong chin and good coach has taken CBS to the moon. I think he's got very sound fundamentals as well, and he's pretty quick hands-wise. I think he's beaten Okoli and then Riakporhe in consecutive fights. I think it's a bit churlish to write him off as a, two-trick pony there. Nat says, pre-fight, my money was on Riakporhe, but it was a hugely disappointing performance from him and a great performance from CBS. Sorry for your loss. Larry Liston says, there are 4 current champions at Cruiser. Arsene Gulamarian, CBS, Jai Patea, and Zerdo Ramirez. Why not do a Super 6 style tournament to boost the popularity of it and steer towards Undisputed? Do it in Saudi. That's a really good idea. If Kala Salnan's watching this, and I know he is. I don't know he is at all. But it'd be great if he picked this up. Nat goes on, scorecards were way too wide. Watch with my fella, and we both had Riakporhe winning 2 rounds at most. A couple that clearly know about boxing, I suppose, based on that scorecard. DB Cooper 1 says, agree, Boxer have somehow their worst signing in a Coley into a win for a huge ticket seller they also promote, while only paying a Coley once. Ben Shalom, rare masterclass. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Shalom seemed quite happy with the result afterwards. He was enthused. He was crediting Billam-Smith, bigging up his future plans. But I didn't think Billam-Smith was actually signed to Boxer beyond this fight. Ayman, maybe you can clarify that one.
Regarding Chris Billam-Smith's ins and outs of that at the moment. But as far as I'm aware, Boxer, well, Shane McGuigan was saying in the build-up they're very happy with the Sky Sports platform, the eyes that it bring to Chris Billam-Smith, and thanking Boxer for pushing Chris Billam-Smith and giving him those opportunities. I don't get the sense there's any reason for them to move away from getting a different promoter or broadcaster for Chris Billam-Smith. And with what's happening over in Riyadh, I don't think it matters too much as to who the promoter is now, because the key is to get those big fights, big undisputed nights. So I don't think there's any keenness or want to move CBS away from Boxer at the moment.
Thunder Road says, is Flexen's audio low all of a sudden? Well, I haven't noticed, Thunder Road, but it's probably since you accused me of gravitating towards drunk chicks. It's made me quite sad, and you know, don't really want to shout too much anymore. Iron Stealth 3.0, I couldn't split them leading up to the fight. I didn't have a clue who'd win. It's usually the sign of a good fight on paper. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really tough one to call going in. Larry Liston, Angel Fernandez's corner advice didn't really seem that directed, and it didn't seem like Richard had an actual game plan except trying to line CBS up. When that didn't work, the ship sunk. It's interesting because I thought it was a very strange performance from Richard Riakporhe, and I realise this was a career best showing from CBS, so I don't want it to seem like I'm taking too much away from him. But the issue is, Richard Riakporhe, beyond the first couple of rounds, didn't really show anything in terms of energy levels, in terms of motivation, urgency, and clearly by around 8-9, the fight was slipping away from him. He needed a knockout or at least a knockdown or two to win. So what was the plan there? And I think you can blame the corner and you could say they weren't giving the right advice, but ultimately the fighter knows if he's losing, and he knows if a greater effort's needed. In the same way that I said earlier, Fury might have been coasting after getting success in the middle rounds. It's possible that Riakporhe didn't realise that the fight was slipping away from him, I suppose, but I don't see how. It was quite a quite a one-sided performance from CBS. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He seems to indicate maybe a problem with the right arm towards the end of the fight. When the fight finished, he walked over towards people he knew in the crowd and he held up his right arm. And then it seemed, I'm not a brilliant lip reader, I don't claim to be, but it did seem like he said something to CBS about it was the arm after the decision had been read out as well. So I don't know if there was an injury there. It seemed like the Sky Sports producers or director was concentrating a lot more on CBS's corner than they were Riakporhe's. Didn't see them go to Riakporhe's corner quite as often. But it'd be interesting because, yeah, I felt it was quite a desultory performance from Riakporhe, and I felt quite bad for him towards the end because it had all been built up around him winning. He got I think I tweeted about it saying, well, he got a home advantage against someone he'd already beaten in his first ever world title shot. So Boxer really couldn't have done, and the way they built him up as well has been exemplary. So they really couldn't have done more for him to put everything in his favour going into the rematch. And for whatever reason, he didn't get the job done. So, yeah, interesting one. Josh, what did you make of it? The main event, and also about Ben Whitaker's performance on the undercard.
I'll start off by talking about the main event. I've just felt a little bit let down by the performance from Riakporhe. Like you said, Danny, it all seemed built in his favour. It's at Crystal Palace Football Club. It's against a man that he's beaten in the past. You'd like to think it's his night. It's going to be the one that he's going to win. But it's almost like he just kind of froze up and didn't really know what to do. But that doesn't take away from Chris Billam-Smith's performance, because he's gone in there with a game plan and executed it perfectly. You know, he says he wants unifications next. I don't see why we can't. You know, why Boxer can't deliver him a unification next. I think he's more than deserving of it now. Then looking at Ben Whitaker, I felt a little bit let down by it. You know, it was a tough fight. It was a fight where we all kind of thought, yeah, this is going to catch fire, because we were looking at the build-up and there was a bit of dislike between Whitaker and Aranyeka. But come the night itself, Whitaker just seemed to keep himself in first gear. So you have a little bit of the showboating, which, you know, did lead to him receiving both a headbutt and an elbow. So I'm not sure how Whitaker's going to feel about that, but I think he needs to start going through the gears a bit more and actually trying to put people out there rather than just showboating and almost carrying someone for 10 rounds, because fans will lose interest in that very, very quickly, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We'll have to see how he comes back from this, because he's only been fighting, because they were talking about activity after the fight. And he's only been fighting kind of twice a year for the past few years. Maybe he needs to be out a bit more often and be tested at a higher level. I mean, I think experience was mentioned a lot by Shane McGuigan after the fight as well. And CBS has had a number of 12-rounders now, both at domestic, European, and ultimately world level. I think that's all stood him in good stead. He's often called the most improved fighter in Britain. I'm sure that's part of it. But yeah, Ayman, you were on a bit of a Ben Whitaker hunt over the week, fight week. And when he eventually got in the ring, I'm not sure he delivered quite what people were hoping for from him, or to justify the hype Boxer and Sky Sports have put around him. However, it's another good win. It's more rounds under his belt, and he barely got hit. What did you make of it?
Yeah, you know what? We're talking about Richard Riakporhe and this being his night and his moment to really capture the world title, and things being put into place for him to win a world title from a boxer perspective, potentially there, as was mentioned in the comments. This was really tailor-made for Ben Whitaker. The whole rivalry or beef with Ezra Aranyeka, which came out of the blue during a press conference in his prior fight, was really kind of manufactured there. There wasn't a real true rivalry. Although they made the most of it, it was engaging when we saw them, you know, going back and forth in press conferences and stuff. You know, it's always that entertainment level is there from Ben Whitaker fight now moving forward. It just seemed like, for me, it was tailor-made for off the back of the Liam Willings fight, where the levels kind of stepped up and Ben Whitaker wasn't able to get his opponent out of there. It seemed like it was Ezra was put in there so that at the stadium show on this great occasion, Ben could probably play with his opponent a little bit, get the dancing, dazzling highlights in, so you can see that on social media with a background of a stadium show, and then eventually get his opponent out of there, and that's another big highlight. And adding to that as well too, if you've seen some of the clips of Ezra's fights, Ezra's opponents, like he doesn't seem like a world beater with respect to Ezra. But I just think maybe it was one of those nights where Ben will kind of look back on and feel that he could have stepped on the gas a little bit more. He could have maybe put the pressure on him, maybe kind of abandoned the highlight search and really kind of stepped on the gas, and maybe he would have been able to get Ezra out of there. I don't think he'll look on it too much. I think he'll just kind of see this as, you never know with these type of things, because Ben, I think there's a lot of kind of background noise in the past about injuries and things. I don't think if the danger wasn't there, which it wasn't on the night, Ben really didn't need to get out of second gear, and he was happy to just coast and happy to see and present to the audience that he's playing with this food, and he can show without knocking his opponent out, without stopping his opponent, that his opponent is still wildly levels below. That brings in the criticism from the likes of Nassim Hamid that will say that he's copying and cloning his style. And if you're going to do that, then you do have to dispatch of your opponents in the style that I did, on the way that I did when I came up. But Ben has put that to bed as well too in his own way. He said, look, I'm not looking to copy anyone's style. I'll do things my own way. And I do like that about Ben Whitaker. My expectation was that he would stop Ezra Aranyeka leading into the fight. However, I don't sit here disappointed that he didn't. I still think that the Ben Whitaker train towards the stop is going to keep moving forward, and this will be a fight that we'll forget pretty soon when the next Ben Whitaker fight rolls on pretty soon too. I imagine what will happen is they'll look to maybe put in Dan Aziz, who as well will be probably kicking himself a little bit. Sepp, I think it is. I'm not sure how to pronounce the first name, but Sepp was actually a pretty good amateur. I think he beat Josh Buatsi in the amateurs, and he fought Beterbiev as well too. Lost to Beterbiev, who doesn't these days, I guess. But Sepp is a good amateur, and I just think Aziz wasn't at the races himself on the night. But that's the sort of ilk you want to see Ben Whitaker in now. But it's always a big occasion. I just think he might a little bit kick himself for not pushing on forward.
Yeah, I thought Dan Aziz's performance was even stranger than Richard Riakporhe's. He didn't seem completely focused in the corner between rounds. Buddy McGirt was telling him what to do, and he seems to be kind of second guessing it a little bit, or not completely concentrating on it. I'm not sure. Maybe he had some issues going into the fight. I'm just kind of speculating, but he definitely didn't seem his normal self. We got some comments from the chat here, including the absolute shock that I'm going to agree with DB Cooper on something. Jason Gavin says, why was Ben W angry that his opponent got the fight for crashing the presser? It's Ben who ultimately decides who he's fighting. No one asked for the Ezra fight. Hopefully this is the last of his massively overmatched opponents. Larry Liston, Whitaker seemed like he was playing it safe at times. Great talent, but we don't know his level till they put him in against the puncher. Perhaps a huge fight with Dan Aziz. Yeah, I mean, Aziz drawing on the card certainly makes their fight seem closer than it did previously. Although, is Aziz a puncher? Top level as a light heavyweight. I'm sure it's not nice to get punched by him, and I don't fancy it myself. But I'm not sure he's a concussive puncher at light heavyweight against top level opposition. I don't think that's been proven yet. DB Cooper won, and this is the one I agree with. I'm sorry, but Ben Whitaker is 27, vast Olympic and amateur pedigree. He needs to move faster. He's the star boy of his Olympic class, yet all his teammates are further advanced. Now, this is a point I made when I was watching his fight on Saturday night at home. I said then, if he was in Russia or Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or any of the countries renowned for producing amateur stars, Cuba is another one. Obviously, he wouldn't be in Cuba. He'd be defected probably to the US, Miami by now. Olympic silver medalist, getting on a little bit in age for a boxer, obviously much younger than me, who isn't. But he would be fast-tracked. He would be fighting for a world title within 10, 15 fights maximum. If he was any of those nationalities, I'm convinced of it. And it'd be better for him as well. He's labouring a little bit. He's probably getting bored fighting the level of opposition he's fighting against. That doesn't, the showboating is a natural thing. But him failing to get these guys out of there, failing to step on the gas, I think a lot of it is just boredom. He needs a challenge for his own development as much as for, the pedigree warranting it. And yeah, I think I can understand why Boxer and Sky Sports might want to take it a bit slower because they want his profile and his name to catch up with his talent, which makes sense all round for, his earning potential as well as theirs. But if he's going to keep improving, if that development's going to continue as a pro as it did in the amateurs, he needs to be tested and not just in sparring. He needs that test as a pro. Maybe Dan Aziz, if he's on form, certainly not the Dan Aziz from Saturday night, whatever the issue was. If that Dan Aziz, the one who fought Buatsi, is still there, then I think he could give Whitaker a test and help him on his journey, maybe even beat him. But Josh Kelly, now people would argue that Josh Kelly was put in too deep too early. And he arguably wasn't the star of his Olympic team. He didn't win a medal, unlike Whitaker. Kelly now, I think, even though he lost to David Avanesian, I think he's benefited from that kind of grounding that he's had. And I think he's a better fighter now because of it. We'll find out when he fights a top-level opponent at 154. But I think you can let your talent wither on the vine, either because you're rusty, inactive, or because you're fighting lower-level competition who aren't testing you. Iron sharpens iron. I know it's a well-worn cliche, but it matters. It's accurate. And I think we need to see, as DB Cooper says, and fair play to DB Cooper, that might be the first rational post he's ever put on this chat. So well done, mate. But yeah, we need to see Ben Whitaker fast-tracked, or at least faster-tracked compared to what he's doing at the moment. Larry Liston says, I'm not that angry at the showboating. However, it does annoy me when he starts showing off when at multiple times there was opportunities to hurt Ezra. Showboating only gets you so far. Jason Gavin, showboating is entertaining when there's prior beef, but doing it every fight against Journeyman dilutes it. I think it's just his natural thing. I think he does it generally, you know, in the amateurs as well. I don't think it's, you know, because of any anger or anything. He seems very relaxed, even when he took a bit of a headbutt. I'll say a bit of a headbutt. It was quite a stiff headbutt from Ezra Anyika at the end of one of the rounds. He took it in good faith. So, you know, maybe that's just the kind of guy he is. Jason Gavin says, other than the showboating, is anything Ben does memorable? I think some of his combinations, like the fast, fluid combinations that he can put together when he's in the mood. I think Ben Whitaker's an outstanding talent. I'm happy to say that now. I think Josh Kelly is an outstanding talent as well. And I think, you know, it's whether he's gone past that time of showing it and hopefully not. And same with Whitaker. I mean, hopefully his best days are still very much ahead of him. So we'll see. Nat says Whitaker needs to fight Aziz next. Fairly confident he won't, but it's the fight that should be made next. Yeah, but then I think he might also draw criticism if that was the next fight. In that Aziz, they've been talking about it for a little while, but he's fighting Aziz coming off a draw against someone he should have beaten. So I think he will get criticism for that. Oh, you weren't willing to fight him when he was on, you know, his top form kind of thing. I hope he doesn't. Never laid claim to copying Nassim Hamid's style. He's always said he did not model himself in that style. Personally, so in Bon Scott's opinion, he's more like the style of Emmanuel Augustus. Who else? He said he likes to eat chickens. Right, okay. Bit random. A national acrobat says, fun fact, and he's put it in block capitals, which means it's almost certainly not going to be fun. Nassim Hamid won his first world title from Steve Robinson, who already had 9 defeats on his record. I mean, that's neither fun nor particularly, you know, not widely known, but appreciate that. Steve Robinson, obviously the famous Cinderella man who came in at incredibly short notice to win the WBO featherweight title and went on a bit of a streak. Defended it a number of times, including against Paul Hodgkinson and Duke McKenzie, former world champions in their own right, before running into Nassim Hamid, who is fair to say embarrassed and dominated Robinson in Cardiff. My favourite fighter of all time, by the way, Nassim Hamid. But yeah, I don't think Whitaker's particularly copying him, or certainly no more so than anyone of Whitaker's. I mean, even Whitaker's generation wouldn't have grown up watching Nassim Hamid. More likely to be Floyd Mayweather, if anyone. But yeah, then Whitaker, the jury's still out, but I think there's more positives than negatives. He's got more upside, as our American cousins like to say. But talking about the weekend's action, they weren't the only fighters out. We saw some action in the US as well. And while we're not going to be talking about Liam Paro's win over Subriel Matias at length, that was an incredible performance. Could be in the upset of the year contention towards the end of 2024, although anyone who's high on Liam Paro will say it shouldn't even be classed as an upset. But what we are going to talk about is Tank Davis, who did experience a few problems early on against Frank Martin before closing the show in a way we're becoming now used to seeing Tank do. Starting with you, Josh, on this one, what did you make of Tank Davis dispatching Frank Martin?
I think we all knew that there was going to, we all knew Frank Martin had the ability to cause some problems. I saw a lot of people in the build-up saying, Frank Martin's no joke, and he is someone that could cause Tank a lot of problems. But Tank just did what, he's been showing his whole career. He started to bash him up and then just caught him with a horrible, horrible shot that's put him out cold. I woke up Sunday morning, checked my phone, scrolling through social media, and you see that type of knockout, and you're like, yeah. I mean, we're used to this with Tank now, though. We know the power that he possesses, but that was a very, very brutal knockout. But I'm sure Frank Martin will come again. He looked very, very drained at the weigh-in as well. So maybe if we're looking at the future of him, it could possibly be a step up in weight. But back to Tank, I thought while he might have struggled a little bit early on, the later the fight went into, it was just, we was getting closer and closer to that shot, and he found that shot, and oh boy, did that shot land and put Frank Martin straight to sleep.
Yeah, National Acrobat's giving Naz a bit of a going over, calling him a bum. I mean, I'm not sure, National Acrobat, who you are, but I doubt you've earned the right to call any professional boxer a bum, let alone a guy who only lost once as a professional and was a unified world champion. But I digress. Robbie Evans says, not a Tank fan, but his level of recording opponents' movements to then make an on-site plan. I'm guessing Robbie's impressed with that. Bon Scott said he woke up about the same time as Martin. Ayman, this is a weird week for Tank. And not only did he get a win, but we've also seen his former friend in Floyd Mayweather, a frenemy, if you like, release the full sparring footage of the infamous session between Tank Davis and Devin Haney. Have you seen the footage, first of all? And if so, what did you make of it?
I scrolled through a couple of minutes of it. I haven't seen it's a full 20-minute video or almost near that point. So I've only seen the first 3 minutes, and I saw the moment where Devin Haney sort of clips Tank as Tank's back turned. So if you've seen the full bit of it, Danny, I'm happy to hear the cliff notes.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen all of it. Or maybe I've seen a little bit more than you have. But I think the bit you mentioned there in the first few minutes is the one that's caused most of the talking points. Also, the fact that Haney seems to have got the better of the spar when we were led to believe the opposite was true in the past. But yeah, I think it was that Tank went to go and have a little chin wag mid-round with someone to kind of mock or undermine Haney. And Haney, as I think most people would do in that situation, just kind of not even snuck up behind him, but walked up behind him and gave him a little clip round the side. And then they just cracked on. But I think what intrigues me more about this story is the motivation for Floyd Mayweather releasing this footage on Tank Fight Week. What exactly has gone down between the two of them, and why does Floyd Mayweather want to remain? I mean, he is relevant. He's always going to be relevant. He was the best fighter of his generation, but why does he want to bring down fighters of the current generation? What did you make of that side of it and Mayweather's motivation?
Yeah, it seems to have gone a little step further than what we usually see. I've seen beforehand that whenever Gervonta Tank Davis Fight Week rolls through, Floyd's always got something to say, and Floyd always kind of inserts himself into the spotlight. But this seems to have taken a much of a step forwards towards a bit more of a heated feeling between the two. I've never seen Floyd as direct as to go on social media and say that the fight was cancelled. I've never seen Floyd Mayweather go as direct on social media to say, don't watch Gervonta Davis this week. Actually, you should go watch the UFC. Free plug. Floyd Mayweather doing something for free. A free plug to the UFC, no less. I can't imagine Dana paid for that at all from Floyd. In spite of Davis's fight week, who off of the back of a victory over Ryan Garcia is now moving into a Martin fight, which look not as great a spotlight as there would have been from the Garcia fight, but still a fight that Tank wants to get through if he wants those bigger riches, the bigger titles, the awards and accolades in the future. So it's very intriguing. I just feel from a point of view of Floyd, it's just another attempt from Floyd to... I imagine he's got a fight lined up. I think he does have an exhibition lined up. I don't know what happened with the rematch with John Gotti. That was supposed to be planned, but I believe there was another exhibition planned in a press conference that didn't feature Floyd that happened. The name escapes me of who he's rematching. It might even be Victor Ortiz. Is it Victor Ortiz in an exhibition again? I'm not sure, but Floyd's got something lined up in the future, and that's probably what it is.
His own exhibition against Yuri Boy Campas, I read earlier.
Right. So yeah, in a nutshell, I just think Floyd is trying to take a little bit of the spotlight, and he's probably got something lined up on his point of view. But Gervonta doesn't need him at this point. Gervonta doesn't need Floyd. His attraction is massive, and you could see in the crowd but PBC have moved over as well too to Amazon Prime. It hasn't detracted or taken away from Gervonta's star. They've been keen, PBC, to make sure they keep Gervonta Davis on their roster when they've let fighters go to other platforms, and that's one that they'll want to keep. So as long as they're keeping Gervonta happy, and Floyd maybe is a little bit upset on the side, I don't think Al Heyman and the PBC will mind too much. I do feel though that Gervonta can't or shouldn't go from a Garcia fight to a Frank Martin fight. I think he's got to keep the momentum going as he gets older and the prime starts to go. I want to see him in those big fights, including a Lomachenko. I would rather see Shakur Stevenson be in the opposite corner, just a fresher fighter. Although I do not doubt the brilliance of Lomachenko, I just feel that I want to see personally the Shakur Stevenson fight ahead of that for Gervonta Davis next.
Now, Diane Abbott's wig here says, the Flexen fella got some viciously fast wit. Imagine having a drink with him down the pub. He would drive you up the wall. Thank you, Diane Abbott's wig. I mean, anyone that knows me knows I'm not really into ego stroking or self-aggrandizement or anything of that nature. Having said that, Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, please put headline number 4 up, because we're going to be talking specifically about an exclusive first-time ever interview that I conducted with Dave Dubois, or Stan Dubois. He doesn't mind either name. The father, of course, of Daniel Dubois, Caroline Dubois, and at last count, I think 9 other children, including Solomon, who's a red-hot amateur at the moment. It sounds like a TV station I never used to watch. But yeah, so I wanted to interview Dave Dubois for quite some time. I'd heard so much about him from different trainers, from his kids, from different people over the years. There was obviously the infamous fallout with Caroline last year, which I asked her about outside Shane McGuigan's gym at the time. And then we saw him playing what seemed like a key role in Daniel's career best win over Filip Hrgovic last time out. He was darting around the ring. He was offering words of advice. And we found out later on that he was actually encouraged to do so by Dan's promoter, Frank Warren. So everyone seems to be on board with it. And so I spoke to Don Charles, Dan's trainer, and said, look, really want to interview Dave. I noticed he's never really done a proper video interview of any of the outlets. He doesn't seem like, a trusting fella necessarily. And Don said, well, I'll speak to him, but he never does interviews, so I can't really promise anything. And I don't know if it was Don's endorsement or, I hope in my fantasy world that Dave looked up some of my interviews and, was so dazzled by the wit that Diane Abbott's wig referred to just there and couldn't resist having a chinwag with me. I've got a feeling that's not the case, though. And he certainly didn't mention it when I eventually spoke to him. But yeah, got invited round to his palatial home in Essex. And you can see some of that home on the video that's currently on the channel. It's an hour long. So you'll need to have a bit of spare time, or like my friend Ellie Scottley often does, I'm big on name dropping at the moment, it seems, go through in 25-second or 30-second skips. Seems to be the way of doing it. But yeah, he's a fascinating character, as anyone who's watched the interview will attest. And as I said, I don't like stroking my own ego. So all I'm going to ask Josh, first of all, is what were your favourite bits of what was an outstanding interview by all accounts?
I'd say the bit I found most interesting.
I love that he's deadpan the answer as well.
No. Okay, but right. No, so probably the part I found most interesting was when he was there talking about how he stopped watching Daniel train. And, he would just sit outside. He wouldn't go inside. Because that was something I'd never really known. So listening to that bit saying, he would stay outside because Dan needs to find his own feet. And that could be a massive part in, one of the big talking points around Daniel Dubois recently has been this newly found confidence that he's got. And maybe that could be a big part. Maybe him not having his dad around when he's training, but then having his dad back on fight night. Maybe that could be part of this big turning point that we've seen in Dubois' career. But I would say that was definitely the most interesting bit, because it's something you never really think about when you think about a fighter. You don't think about these little things like, have they got like a certain someone? Obviously, you'd always expect them to turn to the trainer, but you never really expect that they'd have someone else around in the gym that they'd always be turning to for validation and to make sure they're doing the right thing. So it was very interesting to get that bit of insight. And overall, Danny, I know you're going to like when I say this, but it was a very enjoyable interview to watch. So shout out to yourself, although I know you're already going to shout yourself out a couple more times. But it was a very, very good interview, Danny. Well done.
Carry on. It's fine. Jason Gavin says, did you get any inkling to why Dubois have left so many trainers, amateurs and pros? Yeah, I mean, I asked him about it directly, and he denied the relatively common assertion that it was because he interferes too much and some trainers don't want to let him have as much input. And he said that it wasn't because of that. He said, if something's not working or if someone loses, we tend to move on. It's not anything specific. But then he did say later on that one of the reasons it works so well with Don is because Don does value his opinion and does take his advice on board. So I think there's got to be some element of that involved. He also says, did you notice any jarring features about him? I think anyone who's watched the video or was able to watch it for the full hour would say his laugh is probably the most significant feature. He rarely stops laughing. And as much as I'd like to kid myself, it's because I am some great comic talent. I think it's more that he's just a very happy, kind of positive guy for the most part. And he finds a lot of things quite funny. And he has led a very interesting kind of roller coaster, rags to riches sort of life. So it's definitely a fascinating story. Anderson De Silva says AJ's dad would flatten Daddy Dubois. DB Cooper 1 says, great interview. Oh, stop it. Pulitzer Prize coming your way, Mr. Flexen. Stan sounds like a legend. Did you get to drive the Porsche? Little known facts about me, because we are talking loads about me now for some reason. I don't know who started that. Is that I can only drive an automatic. I've only got an automatic license. So I don't know if the Porsche is an automatic. A Porsche is usually automatic. I don't know anything about cars, as you can tell. But no, short answer, he didn't let me drive the Porsche. But what was very funny was that I got a lift from the train station from Frank, our director of production. Really, really great at his job. And he pulled round into Dubois' kind of slowly opening gates. No euphemism. And he had a little, I don't even know what model car it was. As I said, I know nothing about cars, but like a little light blue car, like, you know. He got faced with like a Porsche, a Rolls Royce, and another like showy car. And you said Frank tucked away in the corner in his little blue car. It was pretty funny. Diane Abbott's wig says, if Daddy was a key factor in Triple D's performance against Hrgovic, it might be a problem because I don't imagine the production in a Wembley AJ fight will afford him the same freedom ringside. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. He said he will be there. Because I said to him, how much of a factor do you think you'll be against AJ? And he said, as long as God's with he'll be all right. I said, well, does that mean you're not going to be there? And he said, no, I will be there. So we shall see. Nat says, great interview, Flexen. He came across really well. Such a likable guy. Is that me or Dubois? Both of us. Thunder Rose says, my favourite bit was Stan saying he was 63 with an oldest child of 43, but insistent he had 2 kids at 16. Yeah, I'm not sure the 2 kids at 16 were his, though. And I know other people pointed this out in the YouTube comments. I think he moved in with someone who already had kids when he was 16, but I'm not entirely sure. He has had 2 or maybe 3, depending on which angle you take, families now. And he talks about that quite openly in the interview. I'm not kind of breaking any secrets there. Larry Liston, sorry, the chat scrolled too quick for me. No surprise, I'm not the fastest. Larry Liston says, I just cannot possibly see any way that Dubois can beat AJ. He's too stationary, doesn't move his head. AJ will line him up with the right hand and take him out of there. However, I can see multiple ways that Zhang could knock out AJ. He has tremendous power in both hands. Arguably the biggest puncher of the division and has proven more than Dubois at this point. We are trying to get hold of Zhilei Zhang for an interview sometime soon, by the way. Where are we? Bon Scott said, I thought he was talking about the woman he was with at the time had some kids. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Maybe the 43-year-old was his. Yeah, his oldest kid is 43 because we talked about that off camera. A national acrobat, unsurprisingly negative about Daniel Dubois, says the only reason Daniel, the quitter Dubois, is getting the fights is because Frank Warren has millions invested in him. I mean, I think beating an undefeated Jarrell Miller and an undefeated Filip Hrgovic might have something to do with it in getting the next fight. But what do I know? Fizz says Mike Tyson versus Daddy Dubois versus AJ's dad versus KSI's dad, fatal 4-way boxing match. Only if it's TLC, Fizz. Otherwise, I wouldn't be interested. Nat clarifies she was talking about both, of course, me and Dubois being, likable, such a likable guy. We're such likable guys. Ayman, I know you've watched the full hour of Daddy Dubois. You told me it was the best thing you'd ever seen, including The Wire in its peak years. What were your favourite parts?
Never actually watched The Wire at all. I think the best series I've probably seen is Lost or Breaking Bad. And I came to the game of Breaking Bad very late in the game as well too, but great series. Not really much of a series watcher now anyways, take too much of my time. But I was happy to spend the time on the 1-hour interview. And Danny, I'm not just saying this just because you're here. I'm trying to spare the whip as the podcast ends this week from yourself for being late in the background. Make sure we're off so you don't hear me yelping in the background. But look, I thought the interview was brilliant. I think the context of the interview will get greater each time Caroline Dubois or Daniel Dubois fights or Solomon Dubois debuts. Stan Dubois, Dave Dubois, whatever he wants to go by. He was a bit of a mysterious figure, wasn't he? We'd always hear whispers about him, conversations that people had with him and such. But much like not like the man with the hat in the Khan versus Peterson fight. He's now been uncloaked, and we've seen Dave Dubois for for the man that he is in this interview. I think he embraces and owns the pushiness factor of being a father and the way he's pushed his kids towards success and greatness, and he's reaped the rewards. The family have reaped the rewards of the success that their sons and daughters have had. I think he was open to his vulnerabilities as well too. Weakness wasn't something that he wasn't willing to share, although he didn't want to share too much of that. I feel one of the things that really struck out to me is him saying that he wasn't there in the corner for Daniel when he fought Joe Joyce, and what could have happened maybe had he been in the corner. Could he have willed Daniel Dubois to get to his feet before the count and fight on? And could that fight have changed? And would we still be talking, or would people, still be talking about Daniel Dubois being a quitter? Had that not been the case, had his dad been in the corner? It was very interesting to see Daniel Dubois, much like Stan Dubois, essentially being, you'd say this of a football fan, but being a glory hunter. He wants success for his kids, and success for his kids will come at any cost, even if it means dotting around and changing the trainers. That's not new to the Dubois family in the pro game. It's something that they've done and had to do in the amateur ranks, floating around Linz of the world and Reptons or whatever club it may have been. It doesn't, much like some of the new football mantras of changing your head coach, and people love the legacy of Sir Alex Ferguson staying at a club for many years. This is a different mind from Daniel, when the mind has been, and when Daniel Dubois' father would have been watching boxing, usually it would be that you'd stay with one coach for a while, you'd show that loyalty. But Stan Dubois has gone against the grain and taken his sons and daughters to different places, and they're happy to do that as long as they're winning. And you get the feeling from Dave Dubois as well too, is they'll stay with Don Charles as long as he keeps winning. So that's something to look out for as well too in the future. But yeah, look, Stan, very interesting figure. One of those interviews where a lot of questions were answered, but more also arise from the interview. His spiritualness is clearly the thing as well too that strikes, considering I think that has been one of his drivers, and it also influences the way he thinks and the end goal, I think, as well too, for his family. And one of the most interesting end goals as well was Solomon Dubois being pitched to China as the next Chinese star. I can't wait to see that journey unfold over in China, as it won't be in the UK. But Solomon apparently is the best of them all as well too. Caroline cemented that as well in my interview with her. I think Daniel said it as well. So he's one to keep an eye out for. But so is future interviews between yourself and Dave Dubois.
Very kind, very kind. Jason Gavin says, would rather be interviewing Stan in Shea Dubois than Big John in his caravan in a field with him warming up, boiling a bag breakfast. To be fair, before it became the cool thing to interview John in a caravan, I did interview John in a caravan along with Peter, Fury and Tyson, just leading up to the Klitschko fight. And if you want to see that, unfortunately, it's not on Seconds Out, but I will drop the link in the chat. But yeah, it's because it's a long time ago. I haven't always worked for Seconds Out, of course. DB Cooper 1 says, Dave Dubois could easily be a cult figure if he wanted. 10 times more personality than the Bosch Chinese merchant, John Fisher. Talking of China. A bit harsh that on John Fisher. Bond Scott says, I watched Dubois versus Joyce. The only advice his corner had to give was shout at him, it's the fight game. Yeah, I mean, Dubois Joyce, Dave Dubois says in the interview, he left that fight and he felt weak afterwards because he was unable to live with watching his son take as many punches as that. He felt he should have been stronger and stayed there. He might have made a difference. So I think there's a certain amount of regret there. We shall see. Now, before I go, DB Coupon's calling me an old timer. That's nice. Since the Ali days, maybe Terence Ali. Yeah, before we go, we do want the results of the poll. So, Modfather Vinny, please do let us know. We asked you Fury against Usyk or Usyk against Fury 2, the rematch. Will it be revenge or repeat? Poll telling us. Hold on. No, I don't think it's been closed off yet. Oh, here we go. Put it in the chat. Show me. Oh, it's incredibly close. Repeat 52%. So 52% going for Usyk to repeat his victory over Tyson Fury, and 47% going for revenge with Tyson Fury reclaiming the heavyweight throne. We never know what happens to the other 1%, spoiled their ballot papers or some such. But yeah, incredibly close. I'm surprised by that because there was so much Fury optimism and positivity in the chat earlier. You would think that the poll would have been more pronounced in Fury's favor, but it wasn't. Interesting stuff. So I want to thank all you guys, first of all, the audience, for joining us. Please do give us a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. And also, if you're watching on playback and so you haven't got access to the live chat or you can't contribute to it, you might be able to read it. Please do still leave us some comments. We do respond to as many of those as we can. Also, Josh, thank you for joining us. And Ayman, as is customary, the final word goes to you.
Yeah, not so surprised by the poll votes with repeat revenge. And I was keeping an eye on that. And for the longest time, that was around the 50-50 mark of repeat revenge for Usyk versus Fury. And that's exactly the same way I think it is. I'm sure as more comes out from both camps as well, too, that percentage will change drastically. Oleksandr Usyk is now currently filming a movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and that brings its own challenges as well too. Tyson Fury is now challenging himself to bring a bigger and better Tyson Fury in the rematch later on this year. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys all in the chat as well too for later editions of the Seconds Out Live podcast. Thank you for all joining us. We'll keep you abreast of all the boxing news and the latest developments this week. I'll be on location in Birmingham, my hometown. Eddie Hearn rolling in this time this week, as well as Josh, who's over in Bolton for Liam Cameron and Lyndon Arthur. So yeah, make sure you keep tuned to Seconds Out Live. Thank you for joining myself. Thank you to Vinny. Thank you to Danny. Thank you to Josh. And we'll see you guys on the next one.